welcome to the newest edition of What's Cookin'. Today, I'd like to read you a story about a little bear who is craving blueberry cake. Let's read the story together to find out if his craving is satisfied. Blueberry Cake by Sarah Dillard. So you can see already, boys and girls, just when I opened on the first page, that there isn't a whole lot of text. There's not a lot of words in this story, but the pictures help to tell the story. So let's take a look at the pictures. The little bear cub comes up to his mama and is kind of tugging on her apron strings, right? And he asks, "Blueberry cake?" And it looks like Mama Bear is thinking about it, right? And then she says, "Blueberries." Because in order to make a blueberry cake, of course, you need some blueberries. Notice that she's handing him a little red pail. She wants him to go pick the blueberries himself. Blueberries! And he's excited to do just that. He sets off into the forest and he's going to go blueberry picking. I wonder, boys and girls, have you ever gone berry picking before? Or apple picking? I know there's a lot of local farms that allow you to do that at certain points of the year, and that's a lot of fun, to pick your own and then go home and make a tasty treat. Blueberry cake, blueberry cake, blueberry cake. Oh! He's so excited. He's singing along the way. He's doing cartwheels about his blueberry cake, and then he sees something, and he seems very surprised. "Oh," he says. What does he see? Blueberries! That's right. He sees the blueberries, but I think he's surprised at just how many blueberries there are. Blueberries! 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 Oh! He's picking the berries. He's so excited. He's tasting a few, but then it seems as though he sees something else that surprises him. "Oh," he says. What do you think it is this time? He sees a butterfly, doesn't he? And he sort of becomes distracted by that butterfly because he stops picking his blueberries. And look very closely, my friends, what's happening? He stops his picking and he runs off to chase the butterfly. And as he does that, it looks like he's losing most of the blueberries that were filling his pail. Uh-oh. But off he goes to chase that beautiful butterfly. And he watches it go. And then he notices the flowers, doesn't he? And he starts to pick the flowers. And he fills the pail with flowers instead. There he is coming home. "Blueberry cake?" And Mama says, "Blueberries?" Does Bear have blueberries? No, he brought home the flowers instead, and they're beautiful flowers, but you can't make blueberry cake with those. Flowers? Blueberries? No blueberries. No blueberry cake. Oh. Does he look disappointed? He sure does. I think he really wanted that blueberry cake. No blueberry cake. And he goes to bed rather sad. But in the morning, he looks out his window. He's remembering that blueberry patch. And he says to himself, "Blueberry cake?" Like maybe he can have some today, right? So he tries again. And he grabs that red pail. And he goes to the blueberry patch. And he fills it up. And he brings it home. Sets it on his counter. And Mama says, "Blueberries!" Do you think Mama will make his cake now? She has everything she needs. She does. And look how excited Bear Cub is when he comes running down the steps. Blueberry cake! Yum. Notice that the beautiful fresh flowers are on the table too. I think Mama definitely appreciated those flowers. It just wasn't what she needed for her recipe. But there they are, and there's the delicious blueberry cake. There they are, enjoying a slice together. And then Little Bear has a new idea. He says, applesauce? Now he wants her to make a brand new recipe. And there are a lot of yummy things that you can make out of applesauce too, indeed. But today, my friends, we're going to try to make that blueberry cake, the very same one that Mama Bear made for Baby Bear. Are you ready to dive into the recipe with me? Great, let's get started. Okay, so now we're ready to begin the recipe. Now before we get started and before I put my apron on, I want to remind everyone that September is Love Your Library Month. And so we encourage you to come on in and fill out a heart for our bulletin board and let us know what it is you love most about the library. Okay, so the next time you stop in, make sure you do that. One of the things that I love about the library is this, getting to share stories and recipes with you. It's so much fun, not to mention delicious. Now, the recipe for today's show is up on our website. You'll also notice some table talkers there, parents. So as you're cooking or enjoying the dessert together, there's some conversation starters or some things for you to talk about as a family. Okay, so those are both up online for you. All right, so let's get started. The first thing the recipe tells us to do is to cream the butter and the sugar together. Now, it calls for, I have already some of this stuff pre-measured out just to make things a little bit easier. It's calling for 1/3 cup of butter. And it's always a good idea when you have to mix butter with something else that your butter is softened, right? So I let it sit on the counter for a bit before the show started, but it still wasn't quite soft enough. So I went ahead and melted it in the microwave, and that's certainly fine to do as well. This is the 1/3 cup. It's exactly what it's calling for. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the bowl. Also, when you cream things together, if you're at home, you can certainly use an electric mixer. I did not bring mine from home today, and the library doesn't own a mixer, so I'm just going to use my muscles, and I'm going to do it by hand. But that's always an option too, and that'll work just fine. You just want to make sure you stir it really, really well until it's creamed together nice and smooth and well blended. Okay, so there's the butter. And the recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar. Again, I already have that measured out, so in goes our 1 cup of sugar. Okay, doesn't matter which spoon I use, I guess, but I'm going to get stirring to make sure that gets blended together. Now, as I stir, let's talk about the story a bit, shall we? Do you remember when Bear went into the forest to fetch those blueberries and he got distracted? You know what distracted means, right? He lost his focus, right? Something else got his attention. He started to chase that butterfly. And I wonder, boys and girls, have you ever lost focus on something? I think we all have at one time or another. It can be hard sometimes to stay on task, especially if you're a small bear cub. So I'm wondering, what are some things that you can do to help stay focused? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any tips? Sometimes when I have a lot to do at work, in my office, if I have a lot of seat work to get done, do you know what I do, boys and girls? I set a timer, and that helps me to stay focused, right? For 30 minutes, I will work on such and such, what's cooking, maybe, getting ready for this class. For 30 minutes, then, I will spend time ordering new books. And then I'll take a break, and I'll set the timer again. And then I'll work on the schedule or something else. So setting a timer often helps. But it's good to brainstorm ideas of ways to stay focused, because a lot of times, like I said, it's hard to lose attention. It happens to the best of us. Okay, you can see now that the cream, or the butter and the sugar is well blended. So now we can go ahead and add in the next ingredient. And the next ingredient is 2 eggs well beaten, okay? So no matter what the recipe says, I always like to beat my eggs separately. And do you know why? You can probably guess. Instead of cracking it on the side of the bowl and dumping it right in, I use a separate bowl and I beat them separately. That's because I don't want to get any eggshells in the recipe, right? And so if I break it in a separate bowl, it's going to be easier for me to fish them out if that does happen. And then I can make sure I keep the recipe nice and not contaminate it with any shells. Another tip that I want to tell you is when you break it on the side of a bowl, often the break isn't clean, the membrane doesn't stay intact, and so you are more likely to get shells. But if you tap the egg on a hard surface, such as your counter, that's less likely to happen. It might still, we're going to try it out right now, but usually if I tap it on the counter and break it apart, even like kind of pull it straight apart, I don't get shells. But when I tap it on my bowl and I go down, that's when I get the shells. Does that make sense? It takes a lot of practice. But let's do it. Tap, tap, tap. Find that crack and pull straight apart. Voila, no shells. I forgot to get a napkin, so where are we going to set this? I'm going to set that in my butter bowl. Okay, it calls for 2 eggs. I'm going to do the same thing. Tap, tap, tap. Find that crack. You'll see a fine line there where you tapped. Go on that fine line and just pull it apart again. We did it. No shells that time either. Now, it says, oh, I'm going to grab a napkin from here to wipe that egg yolk off my hands. It says well beaten, so they're in my separate bowl. I'm just going to take a fork. If you have a whisk, you can definitely use a whisk. And I'm going to go ahead and beat my eggs. Anyway, I'm glad Bear went back out the next day. He kept focused that day, didn't he? And he got his blueberries that he needed for the recipe. And they made that delicious blueberry cake. Can you think of any other recipes that call for blueberries that are also just as yummy? I've made blueberry muffins before. I've made blueberry parfaits with yogurt. That's simple and delicious. I wonder if you've made anything else with blueberries. If you have, I'd love to hear about it. Okay, my eggs are very nicely well beaten. In they go with the butter. So let's go ahead and mix these ingredients together. Now we got 3 things in here, right? We got the butter, the sugar, and the eggs. As soon as this is mixed thoroughly, we're going to go ahead and add the flour, the salt, the sour cream, and the baking soda. Okay, so let's do that. Again, my flour is already pre-measured out. It calls for 2 cups. So in goes 1. Stir, stir. In goes 2. Stir some more. Okay, now we got a lot of flour in here, as you can see. So now we really got to use our muscles again and start stirring. You don't want any flour left on the sides. You don't want any clumps of flour, right? You can see that kind of forming a dough. This is why it's great to have a helper in the kitchen, and you always want to have a grown-up helper anyway, just for safety purposes. So at this point, I would probably pass the spoon or the spatula over to your grown-up helper. Tell them they need a turn. Now, as we add some more wet ingredients, like the sour cream's kind of wet, this will make it easier to stir. So let's go ahead and add that sour cream in. Calls for a 1/2 cup. This I don't have measured out yet, so I'm going to do that right here with you. Okay, smooth that out. Perfect. Sometimes you have to spoon it out of the measuring cup and into the bowl, if it's too thick. Okay, and then I'm going to stir some more. And then all we're missing is our salt and our baking soda. We can go ahead and add that in too, actually. And I think I am going to switch stirring utensils here because my spatula is not very sturdy. I don't know if this plastic spoon will be any more sturdy, but we're going to give it a try. Okay, so 1 teaspoon of salt, scant. Do you know what that word means? That's a new vocabulary word maybe for you. Scant means just enough. A lot of times I'll level off my ingredients when I'm measuring them to make sure they're exact. Scant, they don't even want it to be exactly a teaspoon, right? So like, I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to put approximately 1 teaspoon in there, just enough. With the baking soda, I am going to be a little bit more precise. I love baking soda. You can usually sometimes, well, not with this one, just get it right in the box, oops, and then level it off. I'm just going to put it right over top of a bowl and level it off that way, okay? And in that goes. Okay, and then it's back to our mixing. What I love about this recipe too, I loved the story. I thought it was cute. I love the illustrations. I like, and I didn't share this with you before, but the author, Sarah, is it Dillard? Sarah Dillard there, shares a note with us at the end of the story. And she talks about how she used to go to a part of Maine and she would visit her grandmother every summer in her grandmother's cottage. And that's where she had this blueberry cake for the first time. Her grandmother would make it. And then she would look forward to it every summer, right? Grandma's homemade, delicious, warm, fresh out of the oven blueberry cake. And it's so fun, boys and girls, when recipes have that special meaning, right? When it's connected to a memory. I love making memories in the kitchen. And I wonder if you talk to your parents or your grandparents about that. I wonder if they have any similar memories. Something that they remember from growing up. Maybe something they remember from their grandparents' house or from their family vacations. So that's something you definitely want to ask them about. Find out more. I like interviewing family members, you know? Okay, looks like it's ready to go, except it's missing one thing. What ingredient didn't we add yet? Of course, the blueberries. My blueberries have been rinsed off in this colander. I did that earlier today. It calls for 2/3 of a quart, right? So let's think about this. I think 2 pints make a quart, and it's only calling for 2/3 of a quart. So we're not going to put all these blueberries in. You can measure it out more precisely at home. I just rinsed 2 pints of blueberries off from the grocery store. I didn't measure them out yet. So I'm just not going to put, again, I'm approximating, that's okay. And if you put too many blueberries in, I don't think that's going to hurt, right? So I'm just going to kind of guesstimate that that's about 2/3 of a quart. I'm going to stir those in, and then we're going to pop them into our pan. The author also, at the end of her story, said that when it would come out of the oven, so Grandma used to stay back at the cottage and kind of bake and cook all day, while the kids and the rest of the family went outside and went fishing and swimming in the lake and did different things. And she said it was when they would come in after a long, hot day in the sun, that's when they would come home to the freshly made blueberry cake. And her note in the back of the book says that Grandma always served it with a pat of butter on top. So she liked to eat it when it was still warm, and that pat of butter kind of melted right into the cake. So you can certainly do that too. But there's other ways that you can serve it. I sometimes like to serve my fruit cakes, like the different cakes that I make with different fruit, with whipped cream, a dollop of whipped cream on top, right? There's another idea. I'm sure this cake would taste delicious with a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top. Lots of different ways to do it. Okay, our blueberries are in there. Looks like they're ready to go. We're going to put them in the pan. My friends, it has to be a greased pan. If you have cooking spray at home, that's fine. Go ahead and spray your pan. Oftentimes I don't, so what I do is what I'm going to do today. I just take a stick of butter, the end of it, and I kind of just rub it all over the pan, the bottom and on the sides. And this is how I grease a pan. Why do we grease a pan? Simple. We don't want the cake to stick when it comes out of the oven. If we go to try to slice it and get that first piece of cake out, If we didn't grease the pan, it might not be so easy to do that. It might be sticking to the pan, and you'd have to like scoop it out and we get all crumbly. So it's really important to grease your pan. That makes serving it a whole lot easier. Okay, that's greased. You'll notice when you're looking at your recipe that I posted online, or if you come to check out this book and you see the recipe in the back of the book, you notice it tells you to put it in a 9x9 baking dish. This is not 9x9. It's just what we had at the library. Okay, so I might not put all of this in. We'll see how much I can fit. I don't want it to overflow. Of course, it's going to rise when we put it in the oven, so I have to be careful about that. I think we might be okay, though. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and try it. I'm going to put the whole thing in. If you do use a pan that's not the size that the recipe calls for, just make note that then the cooking time might differ a little bit, right? So you want to keep a closer eye on it. It tells us to bake this at 375 for 20 minutes and then to lower the temp to 350 and bake for another 20. I'm going to keep a closer eye on it because it might not be exactly the same because I'm using a different size dish. Okay, I'm so excited to try this recipe, to share it with my friends here at the library, whoever's working today. Who are you going to share this recipe with? Are you making it with your family? Are you making it with Grandma? Are you going to invite some friends over? Okay. I'm just trying to get every last bit of that batter. There is the unbaked blueberry cake. We're now going to pop it into the oven and wait for the finished product. All right, and we're back. Here's our cake, fresh out of the oven. As we kind of predicted, because I was using a smaller pan, it did not take the full 40 minutes to bake. That's what the recipe calls for. Again, if you're putting it in that 9x9, it probably will take 40 minutes. Ours was done in about, it was like between 20 and 25 minutes. We'll say 23. You'll notice it's a little bit dark on top. That's because I added the nutmeg. We forgot to do that when we were making the recipe. You could use nutmeg or cinnamon, but you want to put a little dusting on top before it goes into the oven. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy it with that warm pat of butter or your scoop of vanilla ice cream, however you prefer. I hope you enjoyed cooking it and making it with your family and sitting around the table and enjoying this mealtime together. Thank you, as always, for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you next month on a new episode of What's Cookin'?